I never imagined I would walk into a billionaire's funeral smelling of street dust, engine smoke and 3 nights of rain, but life has a way of dragging you into places you do not belong. My name is Kehinde Adeyemi, though most people on the streets of Lagos call me Kenny. The city forgets men like me. It writes us off as shadows passing under bridges. Ghosts with no address. But that day, at Madame Olabisi Aladeo's funeral, every pair of eyes would soon be fixed on me. Not because of who I was, but because of what I shouted. She's not dead. Those words burned through my throat long before they left my mouth. I had practiced them while hiding behind the high fence of the Haven Memorial Garden, whispering them into my trembling palms. But saying them aloud, in front of Lagos' richest and most feared families, felt like standing in front of a firing squad. I had a reason. A desperate one. And it began 3 days earlier. I had been sleeping beside the generator room of a church in Surulere when I saw her. An old woman, barefoot, confused, walking like someone chased by shadows. Lagos is harsh, but it has softened me in strange ways. Even when I barely have food, I still notice people who look lost because I know that feeling too well. She looked like someone's grandmother, a wealthy one from the way her lace buba shimmered under the streetlights. I approached her slowly. "Mama, do you need help?" She looked up at me, eyes sharp but frightened. "My son. I don't know where I am. And they want to take me away." Her voice dragged shivers through me. She was trembling. Her gelly was loose. Her wrapper looked damp. Something was wrong, horribly wrong. Before I could ask more questions, a black SUV turned into the street. The tinted glass lowered a little and a man inside yelled, "Mama Beezy." "Ma'am, wait." But the fear in her eyes told me she didn't trust them. "Please," she whispered, gripping my arm with surprising strength, "don't let them take me. I'm not dead." That was the first time she said those haunting words. I didn't understand them then. I thought she was confused, sick, maybe suffering from memory loss. But the panic felt too real. She pulled me behind a kiosk, her breath sharp and fast, like a child running from a monster. "They want to bury me," she whispered. I wanted to calm her, but I had no words. I just watched as she sobbed quietly, shaking like someone who had escaped from a nightmare. By the time I looked up again, the SUV was reversing, searching. When the headlights swept over us, she pressed herself into my chest like a terrified daughter, even though she was old enough to be my grandmother. We hid until the SUV drove off into the night. That was how it began. But now, 3 nights later, I stood at her funeral. People were seated under a grand white canopy decorated like a royal wedding. Lagos society royalty, politicians, oil tycoons, celebrities, pastors, and the powerful Aladeo family sat dressed in shades of gold and cream. The air smelled of imported flowers and money. Nothing in that place belonged to me. Not even the dusty slippers on my feet. They had placed her framed portrait on a high pedestal. Madame Olabisi Aladeo, the billionaire philanthropist, mother of 4, grandmother of 8. A woman respected across West Africa. Her smile in the picture glowed with grace and elegance. But I had seen that same face trembling in fear 3 nights before. I felt like someone carrying a bomb into a wedding. My hands were shaking. My heart thudded so loud I thought someone would hear it. But I forced myself to step into the gathering. Immediately, the stares began. Some people covered their noses. Others whispered to one another. A homeless man at a billionaire's funeral. It was an eyesore. 2 security guards approached me. Hey, you come here?" one barked. But before they could drag me away, a sudden wave of murmuring spread through the crowd. The officiating pastor announced, "We will now allow anyone who wishes to pay tribute to the beloved matriarch." My mind screamed, "Say it now. Say it. Before they bury her alive." Because Mama Beezy told me something else on that first night, a detail that kept replaying in my head like a broken radio. She said, "They gave me something." I slept. I woke up in darkness inside a place that smelled like death. And I heard them say, "She's gone." But I wasn't gone. At first I didn't believe her. Who would? But the terror in her voice wasn't a lie. She vanished from the spot where I left her for a moment to beg for food. Gone. Without a trace. Then the next day headlines, "Billionaire philanthropist Madame Olabisi Aladeo passes away peacefully." I knew it wasn't peaceful. And I knew she wasn't dead. If I kept quiet, they would lower her into the ground forever. I took a step forward. The security guards reached for my arms, but I shouted louder than I ever had in my life. "She's not dead." The microphone screeched. People gasped. A woman even stood up in shock, clutching her chest. The entire canopy froze, and for a moment the wealthy Lagos crowd looked like a painting. One of her sons, Adewale Aladeo, the oldest, rose slowly from the front row. Tall, cold, with a face carved like granite, he stared at me as if deciding whether to have me beaten or arrested. "What did you just say?" he asked. His voice was calm. Too calm. I swallowed. My throat felt like sandpaper. "I said your mother is not dead." Silence slammed into the place. Another son, Femi, stood too. Shorter, rounder, angrier. "Who let this riffraff inside here?" The guards dragged me forward. "Get him out," Femi commanded. "This man is clearly mad." But I wasn't going anywhere. I dug my heels into the ground. "I saw her," I shouted. 3 days ago. She was walking alone on the road in Surulere. She said you people were trying to bury her alive." A scream broke from one of the daughters. The crowd erupted. Some people laughed cruelly. Others gasped. A few women whispered prayers under their breath. Adewale stepped closer. His expensive perfume stung my nose. "You're lying," he said quietly. "My mother died in our family home." "She didn't," I cried. "She told me. She begged me to help her." "That's enough," he thundered. The guards pushed me to the ground. Dust filled my mouth. My knees scraped against the pavement. My head pounded. But even as they tried to lift me by force, I kept shouting. "She's alive. Your mother is alive." Adewale's wife covered her ears. A pastor frowned deeply. Some journalists had already raised their cameras. And then something happened. The funeral director hurried toward the family, whispering urgently. He pointed toward the gold-trimmed casket lying at the altar. Adewale's brows furrowed. Femi's face drained of color. Then the director said something that changed everything. "There's movement inside the coffin." The world around me vanished into silence. People began screaming. Some ran. Others fainted. The canopy shook with panic. The guards holding me froze. Adewale's hands trembled for the first time. He looked at me like he had seen a ghost. Then he whispered, "Open the coffin." I felt my heart stop. Because I knew. I knew what they were about to find. And it would change everything. The moment Adewale said, "Open the coffin," a shiver swept through the crowd like the harmattan breeze that shakes dry leaves off old trees. People clung to one another, muttering prayers, calling on God, gripping handbags, clutching rosaries. Wealth protects you from many things but not from fear. Real fear, the kind that reaches the bones. 2 pallbearers in matching black agbatas hesitated at first. One looked at the coffin, then at Adewale, then at the coffin again, his lips trembling. Finally they stepped forward, their feet dragging like men walking toward judgment. Meanwhile the guards released me. They didn't know what to do anymore. My words they had almost beaten out of me, were crawling into the center of the funeral like a serpent, wrapping around everyone's throats. Adewale pointed again. "Open it." His voice cracked. His younger sister, Yejide, collapsed back into her seat, shaking violently. She whispered through tears, "Mama, don't do this to us, please don't." Femi's wife grabbed his arm. "Honey, what if?" "Shut up," he snapped, but his voice trembled. "It's impossible." The pastor lifted his Bible, clutching it against his chest like a shield. Even he looked pale. It was becoming clear that nobody, absolutely nobody, was prepared for what came next. I stood still, not out of courage but because my legs felt like they were carved from stone. The pallbearers unlocked the golden latches. Click, click. The sound echoed louder than gunshots. A crowd of journalists rushed forward, cameras flashing like lightning. A few security guards tried to hold them back, but you can't stop the press when a miracle, or a scandal, hangs in the air. The pallbearers placed their hands on the lid. One whispered a prayer. The other closed his eyes. Then, slowly, painfully slowly, they lifted the lid. A cold wind blew across the canopy. Someone screamed before the lid was even halfway open. Another person fainted. A woman wailed loudly, "Jesus. Jesu. Ah, ah, ah." The lid rose completely. And there she was. Madame Olabisi Aladeo, the billionaire matriarch. Her body lay still, too still. But her chest, the part covered by a white lace blouse, rose, just a little, almost unnoticeably. Except everyone noticed. "Her chest moved," someone shouted. No, I didn't see anything," another argued. "She's breathing," a journalist cried out, snapping photos. "No," someone else yelled, "it's death reflex." "It's not death reflex," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. "She's alive." Their eyes turned to me again, this time as if I were the only solid thing in that shaking world. Adewale stepped forward. He leaned over the coffin. His eyes widened. Then he staggered back like he'd been hit. "Mama?" His lips trembled. He reached out a shaking hand toward her face, but stopped midway as if touching her would break the last hope holding him together. Femi shoved him aside, leaning in too. "Mama. Mama," he barked, but the anger in his voice was fake. It was fear wearing a tough mask. "Mama, can you hear us? Mama." Yijide began screaming uncontrollably. People started chanting prayers. Some ran toward the gate. Some ran away from the coffin like it had become the mouth of hell. I stood frozen, staring at her face. I recognized that face. I had held her trembling hands 3 nights ago. I had hidden her behind that kiosk. I had watched her tears fall. And now here she lay, alive but trapped inside a coffin meant to erase her forever. The funeral director moved closer, whispering urgently to the pastor. "We must call the ambulance," he said. "Immediately." Yes, the pastor stammered. But before they could take action, something happened that paralyzed every soul under that canopy. Her fingers twitched. Just barely, but enough for everyone near the coffin to scream and fall backward. Her eyelids fluttered. Her lips parted. A thin, broken breath escaped her mouth. Then she whispered, voice dry and trembling like old paper. "Behind." A collective gasp rippled through the funeral. She had called my name. Not Adewale. Not Femi. Not her daughters. Not her pastor. Me, the homeless stranger kneeling on the ground. Femi whipped around, eyes blazing. "How does she know your name?" I opened my mouth but nothing came out. My throat tightened. My stomach twisted. Because now, the truth was no longer something I carried. It had exploded into the open. Adewale shook his head. "Explain yourself." "Not now," I said. "She needs help. She needs an ambulance." "Explain." Femi shouted. "She's dying." I shouted back. Paramedics from a private medical team rushed through the crowd. They must have been stationed nearby. Wealthy families never take chances during big events. They pushed past the panic, moved to the coffin and checked her vitals. One paramedic turned to the other. "She has a pulse. Weak, but she's alive." The crowd erupted again. The pastor dropped to his knees. A woman near the front fainted. Cameras kept flashing. People who had come to mourn now witnessed a resurrection. The paramedics quickly lifted her from the coffin and placed her onto a stretcher. She looked so small, so fragile. Nothing like the powerful matriarch in magazines and newspapers. As they rolled her toward the waiting ambulance, her hand slipped off the stretcher. I rushed forward instinctively and held it before it dropped. Her cold, trembling fingers curled around mine. Her eyes opened halfway. She stared at me. The world around us fell silent. She whispered, barely audible. "They tried to kill me." The paramedic urged me to let go of her hand, but her grip tightened. Painfully. "Don't bury me," she gasped. "They want everything." Her voice cracked. "They want my empire." My heart sank. Her children? Her own children? "Who?" I asked quietly. "Who did this to you?" A tear slid down her cheek. Then she whispered one name. Just one. I felt my stomach fall as if the ground disappeared beneath me. Adewale pushed closer. "Mama? Mama, what are you saying?" She shook her head slightly. Her eyes fluttered again. Her breath weakened. The paramedics lifted her into the ambulance. Adewale tried to climb in. Femi grabbed the other side of the stretcher. Yijide was screaming her name. The ambulance doors closed. The siren wailed. They sped off. Then the pastor, the guests, the journalists, even the security, all slowly turned toward me. The homeless man. The stranger. The only witness. And the last person she spoke to. Adewale's eyes locked onto mine with a cold, sharp intensity that sliced straight through my bones. "You know something," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a warning. "No," Femi growled, stepping closer, his face shaking with fury. "He knows everything." A few guests whispered accusations under their breath. Maybe he kidnapped her before. He's lying. These homeless people do rituals. What if he's working with someone inside the family? Their voices swirled around me like a storm. Then something worse happened. 4 police officers, special anti-crime units, walked straight toward me. One held handcuffs. Another filmed on a body camera. A third asked sharply, "Are you Behind Adeyemi?" My mouth went dry. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I could only watch as the lead officer said the words that sealed my fate. "You are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent." Femi pointed at me, shouting, "Take him away. He's part of it." He was the last person with her. Adewale said nothing. But his silence was louder than every accusation. As they forced my hands behind my back, all I could think was this. I saved her. I stopped them from burying her alive. I told the truth. But the truth was about to destroy me. Because someone in that family wanted her dead. And they were ready to make me the scapegoat. The police van smelled of rust, sweat, and old fear. I sat between two officers who looked like they had already judged me guilty of a crime I didn't even understand. My hands were cuffed so tightly that my wrists burned. Every turn the driver took sent a jolt through my spine. Outside the window, Lagos blurred by, hawkers, Okada riders, buses, street chaos. But none of it felt real anymore. My mind kept replaying the one name Madame Olabisi whispered before they took her away. That name. That single name. It wasn't one of her sons. It wasn't one of her daughters. It wasn't a servant. It was someone much closer. Someone dangerous. And now, no matter what I said, it would be my word, the word of a homeless man, against the most powerful family in Lagos. They would crush me like an ant. The officer beside me nudged my shoulder. Why did you do it? Why did you show up there shouting madness? I didn't do anything, I said quietly. He scoffed. That's what they all say. The van jerked to a stop. The back doors opened. Flashing cameras blinded me. Journalists had already gathered outside the station. They shouted questions I couldn't answer. Why were you with the billionaire before she died? Are you part of a kidnapping ring? Did you hold her hostage? Are you mentally unstable? Did you lie to stop the burial? Officers shoved them aside and dragged me into the station. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A desk fan rattled like it was dying. Everything smelled like stale documents and old cigarettes. They removed the cuffs, only to shove me into a small interrogation room. A single metal chair waited in the center. A camera in the corner blinked red. I sat down. A tall officer with a potbelly and stern face entered. His badge read DSP KO'd Akingbate. People on the streets called such officers Oga KK, the type who pretends to follow the law but is owned by the highest bidder. He closed the door gently, sat across from me and folded his arms. Mr. Kahind Adeyemi. He said my name slowly, rolling it around his tongue like something sour. You have caused quite a commotion today. I told the truth, I said. Yes, he replied with a thin smile, and that is the most dangerous thing to do in this country. He leaned forward. Tell me exactly how you know Madame Olabisi. So I told him everything. How I met her wandering on the street. How she said they wanted to bury her alive. How she hid from the SUV. How she disappeared. How she whispered my name at the funeral. Everything. He listened quietly, tapping his finger on the table. When I finished, he sighed. You expect me to believe this? He asked. I swear it's the truth. Do you know how powerful that family is? I swallowed hard. Yes. If I write this in my report, do you know what happens to me? I don't know. I lose my job. Or I disappear. And nobody will ask questions. He stood up, adjusting his belt. So let's be realistic, he said. A wealthy woman wandering the street? It sounds like a delusion from someone who hasn't eaten well. But she spoke to me. Twice. She is critically ill, he said flatly. Doctors say she is barely conscious. My heart dropped. But she called my name. She said many things, he interrupted. Confused patients talk nonsense. I felt anger rising. She wasn't confused when I met her. He slammed his palm on the table. Shut up. I flinched. A long, painful silence followed. Then he leaned in close, voice low. You are going to sign a statement saying you lied because you were hungry and wanted attention. My chest tightened. I won't sign that. He smiled, a slow, cruel smile. You will. Because the alternative is very simple. He stepped aside and opened the door. Standing outside the door was Adewale Aladeo. He walked in slowly, wearing a crisp black kaftan, no sign of tears or grief left on his cold, sharp face. He looked like a man born to command armies. Behind him were 3 men in suits, bodyguards. Thick-necked, heavy-shouldered, silent. Adewale didn't sit. He stood over me. The temperature in the room dropped. DSP KO'd cleared his throat. Sir, we're still gathering facts. Adewale cut him off with a single glance. Then he turned to me. His voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. You said my mother told you someone tried to kill her. My heartbeat nearly cracked my ribs. Yes. And you also said she told you a name. I looked down at my hands. Yes. Whose name? He took one step forward. I froze. He bent down, lowering his face until his eyes were level with mine. "Say it," he whispered. I opened my mouth, but my throat locked. I couldn't speak. Not with him staring at me like that. Not with the memory of what his mother whispered echoing in my skull. Because the truth was not small. The truth could burn Lagos to the ground. He touched my shoulder lightly. "Let me help you," he whispered. "Tell me the name." I shook my head. I can't. "Is it a member of my family?" I said nothing. He smiled a small, chilling smile. "You know, the police think you're lying. They think you hallucinated everything. But I know you believe what you saw." He gripped my chin, not hard but firm enough to silence my soul. "I will find out the truth. With or without you." He released me and stood up. Then, unexpectedly, he slapped the table sharply and shouted. "He kidnapped my mother. Charge him." DSPKO jumped. "But, sir, there's no evidence." Adewale's voice dropped into steel. "Charge him." The officer swallowed hard and nodded. The room spun. "Kidnapping? I saved her. I helped her. And now they wanted to hang me for it." But before they could take me away, the door swung open again. A young female officer rushed in, panting. "Sir, we have urgent news." "What is it?" Keod snapped. "It's Madame Olatisai," she said breathlessly. Adewale's eyes widened. "Mother?" "She just woke up fully at St. Catherine's Hospital." My heart nearly leapt out of my chest. "She's asking, specifically, for him?" The officer pointed at me. A chill swept through the room. Adewale turned slowly toward me. His cold expression cracked just a little. Then he said 3 words that surprised everyone. "Release him now." DSPKO blinked. "But sir?" "Now." The officer hurried to uncuff me. My wrists burned with relief. Adewale's voice softened, not warm but less icy. "You're coming with me to the hospital." "To see her?" I whispered. "To answer questions," he replied sharply. "My mother trusts you. And I want to know why." His eyes narrowed. "And if she reveals the name you claim she told you, then God help whoever it is." He turned and walked out. The 3 bodyguards followed. A junior officer escorted me toward the exit. My legs felt weak. My hands were shaking. The truth was getting closer. Too close. We stepped outside into the sunlight. Adewale's black SUV was waiting. As I climbed into the back seat, my heart pounded violently. Because I wasn't only going to see the woman I saved. I was going to face the person she accused. And when her children learned who tried to kill her, there would be no forgiveness. Only war. The ride to St. Catherine's Hospital felt like traveling inside a storm. Even though the SUV was smooth and quiet, tension hung so thick in the air that it weighed on my chest. I sat beside the window watching Lagos race by, market women shouting prices, BRT buses struggling through traffic, hawkers waving gala, water, handkerchiefs. Normal life. Ordinary chaos. But nothing about my life was ordinary anymore. Adewale sat across from me, legs crossed, fingers tapping his knee with slow, measured precision. His face was unreadable, too calm for a man whose mother had miraculously come back from the dead. Too calm for a man who suspected his own family of something dark. His silence scared me more than yelling would have. The bodyguards in the front didn't speak. The only sound inside the SUV was the hum of the engine and my racing heartbeat. After 20 minutes, Adewale finally broke the silence. "Let me make something clear," he said, voice low and steady. "My mother, she is the pillar of our family. The reason we are who we are. If someone hurt her, I will find out." I nodded slowly. "But," he added sharply, "if you're lying or if you're part of anything that endangered her, even unintentionally, you will not survive it. Do you understand?" I swallowed. "I'm not lying. I swear." He stared at me for a long second as if trying to read my soul. Then he looked away. We turned into the hospital compound, a tall, modern building with glass walls reflecting the afternoon sun. Security officers were everywhere. Private guards too. Family vehicles lined the driveway. Journalists had gathered at the gate, cameras raised high. The SUV passed through the private entrance. When we stepped out, the air smelled of disinfectant and rain from an earlier drizzle. My slippers squeaked on the polished tiles. I felt painfully out of place among the marble floors and expensive perfumes. Inside, nurses whispered when they saw Adewale. Doctors straightened their coats. Visitors stopped mid-stride. People bowed slightly. Respect surrounded him like a crown. I followed closely, feeling their eyes on me like needles. We entered the VIP wing, white walls, soft lighting, a quiet too clean to be natural. A nurse approached with a tablet. "Sir, she's awake and stable," she said. "But still weak." "Can she speak clearly?" Adewale asked. "Yes, but in short sentences." He nodded. "We need answers." We walked down a silent corridor. My palms were sweating. My legs trembled. We stopped at a door labeled Private Suite 3. Adewale turned to me. "Remember," he said quietly, "do not say anything unless she asks you directly." I nodded. He pushed the door open. The room was peaceful. Soft sunlight filtered through blinds. Machines hummed quietly. The smell of medicine mixed with scented air freshener. And there she was, Madame Olabisi Aladeo, sitting up slightly, propped by pillows. A blanket covered her legs. A drip was attached to her right hand. Her face was pale, thinner than it had been in her portrait, but her eyes had regained their strength. She saw me first. Her lips trembled into a faint, knowing smile. "Kind." My breath caught. I moved closer but didn't speak. Adewale rushed to her bedside. "Mama. Mama, are you all right? What happened to you? Do you know how afraid we've been?" She placed a weak hand over his. "My son. I am alive. That is enough for now." Her voice was soft but steady. The other children were in the room too. Yejide, Femi, their younger sister Lola. They had all gathered around her bed like frightened birds. But when they noticed me, their expressions changed immediately. Yejide's eyes narrowed. Femi's lips curled. Lola looked confused and uncomfortable. Adewale motioned for silence. "Mama," he said gently, "you spoke earlier, at the funeral, you said someone tried to harm you." Her eyes flickered. Pain crossed her face. She closed her eyes briefly as if reliving something terrible. Femi stepped forward hurriedly. "Mama, don't stress yourself. Just rest. We can talk later." She lifted her hand slightly. "Let me speak." The room went silent. She opened her eyes and looked at me again. "Kihind saved me," she said softly. Femi scoffed loudly. "Mama, this homeless stranger?" "He." Adewale held up a hand. "Let her talk." The matriarch took a deep breath. "I remember leaving my room that night. I remember feeling dizzy. My tea tasted strange. My chest grew heavy. I tried to call for help but I could not move my lips. It felt like I was sinking underwater." Her voice cracked. "I was aware. I heard everything. Someone said, 'We will announce her passing now. Everything is ready.' They spoke as if I was already gone." Tears filled her eyes. "My children. I heard you crying. But I could not respond." The whole room froze. This wasn't a sickness. This was something else. Something deliberate. She continued, "Then they placed me somewhere cold. I could smell formaldehyde. I could hear sliding drawers. I realized I was in a morgue." Yejide covered her mouth, sobbing. "Mama. Mama, no." Femi stood stiff, hands trembling. Lola stepped back, shaking her head. "No, no, this is impossible." Adewale's face became stone. "Who put you there?" he whispered. Silence. Then she turned her gaze toward me again. Her lips parted. "Kihind knows," she whispered. All eyes snapped to me. Femi shouted instantly, "He's lying. He must have manipulated her somehow." "Enough." Adewale snapped, for the first time raising his voice. He turned to me. "Tell us what she told you." My lungs tightened. My heart felt like it would burst. Every face in the room waited. Angry, fearful, suspicious. I swallowed hard. 3 nights ago, I began, I saw her wandering in Suralere. She was confused, scared. She said someone tried to bury her alive. She said she overheard things. She said she escaped. The daughters gasped. Femi clenched his fists. Adewale stared at me, unblinking. And she said, "They want her empire." The room erupted into chaos. What empire? Who would say such a thing? Mama, who poisoned you? This man is twisting everything. Adewale's voice cut through the uproar. "My mother spoke a name to you," he said quietly. "Tell us." My mouth went dry. The room fell painfully silent. Every eye in the room drilled into me. My hands trembled violently. I looked at Madame Olabisi. Her eyes were full of fear. And something else, a plea. As if she was begging me to speak her truth. Slowly, painfully, she nodded at me. A single tear slid down her cheek. "Kihind, say it." I felt like a man standing on the edge of a cliff with fire behind me and a bottomless pit ahead. But I had no choice. I took a deep breath and said the name. The room went dead still. No one moved. No one breathed. Femi staggered. Yijide collapsed into a chair. Lola covered her mouth with both hands. Adewale's jaw clenched so tightly I thought it might snap. He turned slowly to the person whose name I had spoken. The person standing in the corner near the window. A person who had been silent since we entered. A person whose face now blanched like ash. His younger brother. Femi. Madame Olabisi whispered again, voice full of grief. It was him. The room exploded. Lola screamed in disbelief. Yijide sobbed loudly. Femi shook his head rapidly, stepping backward, hitting the wall behind him. No. No. Mama, no. He's lying. This man is lying, he shouted. I would never. How can you say that? How can you? Adewale moved toward him slowly, like a panther stalking its prey. You tried to bury our mother, he said quietly. Why? I didn't. Femi screamed. She's confused. She was drugged. You know she's been sick. You know. Adewale grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. Why? He demanded. Femi's eyes darted wildly, breathing fast, like a trapped animal. Why would I do that? He cried. Why would I kill her? She is our mother. Madame Olabisi's weak voice whispered. Because I removed his name from my will. A pin could have dropped in that room and echoed like thunder. Adewale's eyes widened. Yijide screamed again. Lola fainted. Femi stopped struggling. His mouth froze open. His eyes filled with horror, then rage. Mama, he whispered. How could you? She closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. I loved you, she whispered. But you chose greed. Adewale released him, disgust written across his face. Femi slid down the wall, collapsing to the floor. For the first time I saw guilt in his eyes. Real guilt. Not the guilt of rumors or suspicions. The guilt of a man who had been caught. A man whose plan had failed. A man who knew the consequences that awaited him. Adewale turned to me. This isn't over, he said. Not a threat. A promise. I didn't know if he meant for me, or for his brother. But as the weight of everything settled in that hospital room, the truth, the betrayal, the attempted murder, I realized something that chilled my blood. Femi was not the only one involved. He was not smart enough to plan this alone. And the real danger, the true mastermind, was still out there, watching, waiting, ready to strike again. And now that I had spoken the truth, they would be coming for me next. The next morning I woke up before the sun, long before the city's noise pushed itself into the world. I barely slept, but somehow my body felt lighter than it had in years. Maybe it was the hope that Amina was alive. Maybe it was the fear of what would happen when we found her. Or maybe it was simply the strange comfort of sleeping under a roof again. I stepped out into the chilly Johannesburg dawn. The sky was still deep blue, the kind of color that looks like it's holding its breath. I walked toward the small veranda where Mfo was already waiting with 2 steaming mugs. You didn't sleep, she said without turning. She always knew things before I said them. I tried, I replied. You're afraid. Wouldn't you be? I said, letting out a long breath. We're about to confront a billionaire family. We're about to tell them their entire story is a lie. Mfo handed me a mug. Sip. You'll need strength. I took a drink and felt warmth cut through the cold air like a knife. Thank you. She leaned on the wooden railing. I keep thinking. If this were your mother, if everyone believed she was dead and a stranger showed up saying otherwise, you would hope, right? No matter how rich or powerful you were. Hope can be painful, I said. But necessary, she replied. We didn't talk for a while. We just stood in silence, watching the sun rise like a slow, reluctant promise. By mid-morning, the 3 of us, Mfo, her brother Kamatso, and I, were crammed inside his small gray Toyota, heading toward the Ofori mansion. The tires hummed on the road, and every bump made my stomach tighten. Just to confirm, Kamatso said, adjusting the rearview mirror, you have no proof besides your memory that this woman is alive? My memory and the fact that her body was never released into the morgue chain, I said. And the necklace. The necklace is something, he nodded. But not enough to win over a family that wealthy. I don't need them to believe me immediately, I said. I just need them to listen. The mansion came into view before we even reached the gate. It stretched wide across the landscape, white walls, long glass windows, palm trees standing like soldiers guarding secrets. Everything about the house screamed money. The kind of money that moves entire systems quietly without ever being questioned. The gates were tall, black, and intimidating. 2 uniformed guards stood on either side, their expressions already unwelcoming. Here we go, Mfo murmured. We parked a few meters away. I stepped out, my legs shaky but determined. As we approached the gate, the guards stepped forward with their hands raised. "State your business." "We need to speak with Mr. Kwame Ofori," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. "He's not receiving guests." "It's urgent," I insisted. "Everyone thinks their matter is urgent," the guard replied. I inhaled slowly. "Tell him, it's about his wife." Both guards froze for a split second, exchanging a glance. One leaned closer to the other and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then the first guard straightened. "Wait here." He disappeared inside the compound. Mfo leaned close to me. He reacted. "I saw," I whispered. After about 2 minutes, a sleek black SUV rolled toward the gate from inside. The tinted windows hid whoever sat inside until the door opened with a firm click. A tall man stepped out, dark skin, perfectly cut suit, the kind of face that carried exhaustion like a permanent shadow. His eyes found mine with the sharpness of someone who had been grieving too long and trusting too little. "I'm Kwame Ofori," he said. His voice was steady but everything behind it was fractured. "You said you have information about my wife?" I swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." "Who are you?" "My name is Daniel. I was homeless. I worked around the roads leading to the hospital your wife was taken to." His posture stiffened. "And what does that have to do with anything?" I reached into my pocket and slowly pulled out the necklace, the silver one with the crescent-shaped pendant and the small engraving that read, "My heart, my Amina." Kwame's eyes widened painfully. For a moment his breath caught. That's her necklace," he whispered. His voice cracked just slightly. "Where did you get that?" "I found it the night she was taken," I said. "But not taken to a morgue. Taken away, by men who didn't wear hospital uniforms." Silence. Heavy silence. The gates seemed to hum with tension. Finally Kwame spoke. "Get in the car." We exchanged brief looks, me, Mfo and Kamatso, but I obeyed. I slid into the SUV while the others followed behind in their Toyota. Inside the car, the air was cool and smelled faintly of cologne. The leather seats were expensive, soft, and unfamiliar under my hands. Kwame sat beside me, his eyes glued to the necklace in my palm. "Explain everything," he said, voice controlled but trembling underneath. So I told him. I told him about the night I saw the ambulance pull up. How the paramedics didn't tag the body. How they loaded her quickly. How something felt wrong. How I followed them until I saw them divert before reaching the hospital gates. "How long did you wait to tell someone?" he asked. "Until yesterday." "Why?" "Because I was nobody," I said honestly. "Because I was a homeless man who slept in unfinished buildings. Because no one ever listens to us." For the first time he looked at me, not through me, not around me, at me. And I saw it. A flicker of understanding. "Do you believe she's still alive?" he whispered. "I know what I saw," I said. "And I know that what happened wasn't normal." Kwame leaned back, rubbing his forehead. "You have no idea the things people have been telling me since she died. Paparazzi, scammers, pastors, psychics, everyone claims to have a message. I'm not trying to scam you." "I know," he said quietly. "Because you brought this." He touched the necklace with trembling fingers. "She never took it off," he murmured. The SUV rolled to a stop in front of a side entrance. A private home office, I assumed. The door opened and a woman stepped out, middle-aged, elegant, with a stern face softened by grief. "This is my mother-in-law," Kwame said. Her eyes pierced right through me. "You're the one from the funeral." "Yes, ma'am." "Why did you do that?" she asked. "Because your daughter's story was wrong," I said. "And someone needed to say it." Her lips tightened. Then, unexpectedly, tears began to fill her eyes. "Take him inside," she whispered. In the quiet room that followed, Kwame paced. His mother-in-law sat stiffly on a couch. I sat across from them, feeling the weight of two worlds pressing against me. "If what you're saying is true," she said slowly, "then someone wanted her gone. Not dead, gone." Kwame stopped pacing. "My company went through a hostile takeover attempt 3 months ago." My heart thudded. "Are you saying someone attacked your wife to get to you?" I asked. His jaw clenched. "I don't know. But this opens a door I hoped would stay shut." He turned to me, eyes dark and determined. "Daniel," he said, "if my wife is alive, we are going to find her." "I'm ready to help," I said. "This will be dangerous," he warned. "So is sleeping under bridges," I replied softly. A silent agreement rippled through the room. Then Kwame said the words that made the air shift. "Someone kidnapped my wife, and made the world believe she was dead." His mother-in-law whispered a shaky prayer. I closed my eyes. Everything was changing. Then he added, voice low and certain. Tomorrow morning we go to the hospital. And we start pulling every thread. It had begun. I barely slept that night. Even though I had been given a guest room, my own bed, clean sheets, the hum of a heater instead of the cold bite of Johannesburg wind, my mind wouldn't rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Amina's face the night she was taken. Not the face the newspapers printed. Not the face on the funeral program. The real one, frightened, fighting for breath, yet alive. Alive. At dawn I sat up, rubbed my face and whispered to myself, today we prove it. When I stepped outside I found Kwame already waiting by the SUV. He wore a dark blue suit, clean-shaven, eyes red from sleeplessness. There was a tightness in his jaw that told me he was preparing for war. His mother-in-law stood beside him, clutching her handbag like a lifeline. She had barely spoken since last night, only sitting with her grief like a shadow she refused to let go of yet. You ready? Kwame asked. I nodded. Mfo and her brother joined us moments later in their Toyota. She offered me a small smile, gentle, encouraging, the kind that made you believe that even chaos could be survived. We set off toward the hospital, the one where Amina was supposed to have died. The drive was quiet. Heavy. The kind of quiet that comes before something irreversible. As the building came into view, my stomach clenched. I knew this place too well. I had slept outside its walls more times than I could count. Kwame parked. We stepped out together. The hospital looked the same as it had the night Amina was brought in. White paint peeling near the edges, tall glass doors that reflected the street, nurses moving like tired angels inside. I exhaled deeply. This is it. Kwame placed a hand on my shoulder. Lead the way. Inside, the cold air conditioning hit us immediately. A nurse at the reception desk looked up with a practiced smile that faded when her eyes met Kwame's. She straightened instinctively. Good morning, sir. Kwame nodded. We need access to the emergency unit records from 3 nights before my wife's accident. Her face stiffened. Sir, we've already given your family all the necessary documents. You gave us the documents someone wanted us to see, he replied. The nurse hesitated. I stepped forward. Ma'am, I was outside this hospital the night she was brought in. I saw something that didn't match the reports. Sir, you can't just. This man saved my wife's necklace, Kwame said sharply. We're not leaving until we speak to the shift supervisor from that night. The nurse's eyes darted nervously. One moment. She hurried into a back office. Kwame exhaled slowly. They're hiding something. His mother-in-law clasped her hands in silent prayer. After nearly 5 minutes, a man in a white coat walked out, a doctor, tall, lean, with glasses that reflected the harsh hospital lights. Mr. Ofori, he greeted. I'm Dr. Nkube. I hear you're asking about your wife's arrival night. Yes. The doctor's expression tightened. Please, follow me. He led us down a long corridor that smelled of disinfectant and secrets. My heartbeat pounded louder with every step. We entered a small meeting room. The doctor closed the door behind us. Before I show you anything, he said quietly, I need to tell you this is dangerous for me. Many of us were told to never speak of that night. Kwame stiffened. Told by who? The doctor swallowed hard. By men who came 2 days after your wife supposedly died. They claimed to be from a federal unit. They took files. They warned all staff to remain silent. Kwame's hands curled into fists. What happened the night she was brought in? I asked. The doctor took a shaky breath. Your wife arrived in critical condition. But she was alive. Barely but alive. His mother-in-law gasped and covered her mouth. She did not die here, the doctor continued. Not in the emergency room. Not in the ICU. In fact, he reached into a drawer, pulled out a flash drive and plugged it into the screen on the wall. A video loaded. It was grainy footage from a CCTV camera pointed at one of the emergency ward hallways. I moved closer instinctively. There, on the screen, a stretcher rolled past. Amina. Unconscious but unmistakably alive. Her chest rising and falling ever so slightly. 2 nurses walked with the stretcher. And behind them. Wait, I whispered. Those are the same men I saw. Same jackets. Same boots. Kwame stepped closer. His breathing quickened. The doctor paused the footage. These men weren't hospital staff. They took her through the service exit. 15 minutes later, the system logged her as deceased. Deceased? Kwame exploded. But she was alive. We know, the doctor whispered. But the paperwork said otherwise. And you didn't say anything? Kwame demanded. Fear flashed in the doctor's eyes. I have a family, sir. They threatened all of us. I felt the air in the room grow heavier. My palms were sweating. The truth was unfolding too fast, too violently. Kwame turned to me. You were right. I nodded, though my legs felt weak. His mother-in-law whispered, My daughter, where is she? Who took her? Why? The doctor lowered his gaze. There is one more thing. He opened another file, stamped heavily with the word restricted. On the top page was a signature that made Kwame freeze. My God, he whispered. No, this can't be. I walked around the table to see it. The signature belonged to Adisa Ofori, his younger brother. The brother he trusted. The brother who spoke at the funeral. The brother who cried hardest. The room fell painfully silent. Kwame whispered, Why would he sign off on my wife's death? The doctor shook his head. I don't know. But he authorized the body transfer. But there was no body, I said softly. Exactly, the doctor replied. Kwame staggered back like he'd been punched. My own brother? He whispered. Why would he? He didn't finish the sentence. His phone suddenly vibrated. He looked down. His face drained of all color. What's wrong? I asked. He turned the screen toward me. A message. From his brother. 4 chilling words. Stop digging. For your own good. The words on the screen burned into my mind like acid. Stop digging. For your own good. I felt my stomach twist, my hands clenching into fists. I had seen threats before, whispered in dark alleys or left scrawled on walls where no one would notice, but this one came from inside the family. From the very blood Kwame trusted. Kwame's hand shook as he lowered the phone. His eyes, dark and stormy, met mine. He knows we're on to him. I swallowed hard. We can't stop now. She's alive. That's all that matters. His mother-in-law, standing beside us, whispered a prayer. This is evil. Evil hiding behind the faces of the ones we trust the most. The doctor, still trembling, spoke up. Sir, if you pursue this, you'll be exposing your family's secrets. The men who took her, they aren't ordinary criminals. They're connected. Very powerful connections. Kwame ran his hands through his hair. My brother? His voice cracked. I never thought he'd. I put a hand on his shoulder. Now you know. And now we act. Kwame nodded, determination hardening his expression. We need to track where she was taken. Whoever did this left clues, they always do. The doctor hesitated. There's one lead. Security footage from the service exit shows a black SUV leaving the hospital that night. It was registered to a small logistics company on the outskirts of Lagos. Mfo leaned forward, her eyes bright with urgency. That's something. That's a place we can start. Kwame's jaw tightened. We leave for Lagos immediately. The thought of returning to Lagos sent a shiver down my spine. It was the city where I'd been invisible, the city that had almost swallowed her whole, the city where the truth was buried under wealth and fear. I'll prepare, Mfo said. We need contacts on the ground. People who can help us without being watched. By mid-afternoon, our small convoy was on the road to Lagos. The SUV carried Kwame, his mother-in-law, and me, while Mfo and her brother followed in their Toyota. The tension was unbearable. Every honking car, every police checkpoint made me flinch. Hours later, the familiar chaos of Lagos greeted us. The honking, the shouting, the heat rolling off concrete like a furnace. I felt my chest tighten. This was where it all started and where it would end. We arrived at the logistics company's warehouse just after sunset. The building was unremarkable, gray and faded, but my instincts screamed that inside, secrets were festering. Kwame motioned for us to stay back. He walked to the entrance alone, his silhouette outlined against the dim streetlights. The guard at the gate looked up, suspicious. This is private property, he said. I'm looking into a matter of life and death, Kwame replied. I have reason to believe someone was held here against their will. The guard hesitated, shifting uncomfortably. Then with a sigh he unlocked the gate. Kwame stepped inside, followed closely by me. The interior was dark, dusty, and smelled of oil and metal. Pallets of crates lined the walls. My heart thudded in my chest. Somewhere in this warehouse, evidence of the conspiracy was waiting. Suddenly, a creaking sound echoed behind us. I spun, but it was only a stray cat darting between crates. Then we heard muffled voices. Kwame gestured for silence. We moved closer, crouching behind crates. Through a narrow gap, I saw them. 2 men in dark clothing, talking in hushed tones, standing over a figure lying on a stretcher. Amina. Alive, pale and weak but unmistakably alive. My throat went dry. She's here. Kwame's hand tightened on my arm. Stay calm. We need a plan. One man whispered, she's still too weak to be moved. The other replied, we need to get her out before they find out. I swallowed, heart hammering. We couldn't wait. Every second counted. Kwame nodded at me. When I give the signal, you go for her. I'll handle the men. I felt my legs trembling, but I nodded. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked beneath my foot. The two men turned sharply. Kwame lunged forward with unexpected force, tackling the nearest man to the ground. The other drew a gun. Don't! Kwame shouted. I rushed to Amina, gently lifting her from the stretcher. Her eyes fluttered open. Behind, she whispered. It's me, I said, trying to sound calm. You're safe now. The gunman shouted, and I realized we weren't out of danger yet. Kwame was wrestling with the other man, and the gun was aimed directly at us. I tightened my grip on Amina and ran, weaving between crates, my heart pounding in my ears. Kwame's shout echoed, go! Don't stop! We burst through the side door into the night. The SUV was parked nearby. Mfo and Kamatsu were waiting, engines running. I helped Amina into the back seat, and we sped off just as gunshots rang out behind us. Adrenaline surged through me. We had her. She was alive. But the fight was far from over. Somewhere out there, someone had planned her disappearance meticulously, and now they knew we were coming. And they would stop at nothing to make sure the truth stayed buried. The SUV cut through the Lagos night, weaving past traffic and streetlights, the city alive with 1,000 eyes we didn't want watching. Amina lay in the back seat, pale and trembling but breathing steadily. Every breath she took sounded like a victory against the dark forces that had tried to bury her alive. Kwame sat beside me, his jaw tight, hands clenched on the dashboard. We're not safe yet, he said. He knows we're here. My brother, he's dangerous, clever. He won't stop until he gets what he wants. I nodded. But she's alive. That's what matters. Everything else we can handle. Amina stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. She looked at me, and despite her weakness, a faint smile touched her lips. Behind, she whispered. I'm here, I replied softly, holding her hand gently. Her fingers tightened around mine. They tried, her voice faltered. They wanted me gone. I squeezed her hand. I know. But you're safe now. Kwame's mother-in-law, seated beside him in the front, prayed quietly. The soft murmur of her voice filled the car, a protective cloak around us. We drove in silence for a while, each of us lost in our thoughts. I could feel the weight of what had just happened pressing down on us, yet there was a strange sense of hope, fragile but alive. Finally, Kwame spoke. We need to take her somewhere secure. Somewhere he can't reach. Mfo, who had been following closely behind, pulled up beside the SUV. We have a safe house prepared, she said. It's off the grid. Nobody will find her there. Kwame nodded. Good. Let's move. When we arrived, the house was quiet, hidden behind high walls and thick foliage. Amina was helped inside, guided gently to a bedroom prepared for her recovery. The room was simple but comfortable, with soft linens and a few personal touches. As she settled onto the bed, her eyes met mine. Thank you, she whispered. You don't need to thank me, I said. You just focus on getting better. Kwame stood near the door, his mind clearly racing. We need to plan our next move. If Adissa knows we have her, he'll act fast. He won't hesitate. I nodded. Then we need to strike first. We need evidence, proof that he tried to kill her. And we need to expose him before he can cover his tracks. Kwame's face darkened. He won't go down easily. He's smart, ruthless. He's not just trying to control the company, he wants our family destroyed. Mfo placed a hand on his arm. We can handle it, but we need to stay careful. One wrong move and... I know, he said, his voice trailing off. I walked over to Amina, sitting beside her on the bed. Her eyes were tired but focused. You'll have to tell everything, I said gently. Everything you remember about that night. Every detail will help us stop him. Her hands trembled as she took a deep breath. It started with the tea, she whispered. They drugged it. I felt dizzy, weak. Then they moved me like I was nothing. I remember feeling trapped, cold, and then darkness. I held her hand tightly. You're safe now. No one can hurt you here. She nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. I trusted them. I trusted my family. And that trust was betrayed, I said softly. But now we can make things right. Kwame stepped closer. We need a strategy. We can't just rush in blindly. He has resources, allies, people who won't hesitate to silence anyone who interferes. Mfo pulled out a laptop. I've been tracing his movements, communications. He's been careful, but there are patterns. Small mistakes we can exploit. I leaned in, examining the screen. If we can predict his next move, we can stay ahead. And we can gather undeniable proof, video, documents, witnesses, so that when we confront him, he has no way to escape. Kwame nodded. We'll need people on the inside. Staff who aren't loyal to him. And we'll need to protect Amina at all costs. The night stretched on as we planned. Maps were spread across tables, phone numbers jotted down, alliances considered. Every decision felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of fire. One wrong step and it could all collapse. Finally, Amina, exhausted, fell asleep. I watched her for a moment, her face peaceful for the first time since I had found her. Kwame turned to me. We need to move quickly. Tomorrow we begin the operation. We'll expose Adissa and ensure he can never hurt her again. I nodded, feeling a mix of fear and determination. The path ahead was dangerous, but there was no turning back. Outside, the city hummed with life, unaware of the storm gathering within the Ofori family. And somewhere, hidden in the shadows, Adissa was watching, waiting, plotting. We had Amina. We had proof. And now the hunt had truly begun. I did not sleep the night before the meeting at Lagos State High Court. Not even for a minute. I sat by Mama Kemi's bedside in her quiet hospital room, watching her chest rise and fall as though each breath was borrowed from heaven itself. The doctors said she was stable, but exhaustion still sat heavy in her body. She kept whispering that she didn't want to cause trouble. She just wanted to live quietly, peacefully, away from everything that had tried to destroy her. But trouble had already started. The moment the news leaked that the late billionaire matriarch, supposedly declared dead and buried, was actually alive and recovering in a public hospital, the entire country erupted. Bloggers were outside the hospital gates. Reporters camped by the mortuary. There were already conspiracy theories flying around: ritual, inheritance fights, cult involvement, medical malpractice. I didn't care about any of that. All I cared about was making sure the world heard the truth from her own lips so nobody, especially her son, could twist it. By sunrise, a police convoy arrived to escort us to court. Not because we asked for it, but because the hospital said the crowd outside was becoming uncontrollable. As they guided Mama Kemi into a wheelchair, she held tightly onto my wrist, her fingers trembling. "Michael," she whispered, voice thin but steady, "whatever happens today, do not let them scare you. I know those people. They will try to shame you, insult you, even threaten you. But you have been my angel. Don't let them break your spirit." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. And I meant it. When we arrived at the courthouse, photographers rushed like a flood, their flashes lighting up the morning. People shouted questions, some screamed her name, others screamed mine. Is it true she resurrected? Is it true the family tried to bury her alive? Are you using this woman for clout? Clout? They didn't know I had slept under bridges. They didn't know I had begged for leftover bread at bus stops. What kind of clout could I possibly be chasing? Inside the courtroom, the tension was so thick you could almost bite it. The place was packed with spectators. Lawyers, police, journalists, even strangers who just wanted to witness the spectacle. Nigeria loved drama, and this was the drama of the year. Then they walked in. The billionaire's children. 4 of them. All tall, well-fed, dressed in expensive black clothes like they were still in mourning. Their faces were hard, very hard, eyes sharp with anger and embarrassment. At the front was the oldest son, Toby, slick suit, cold eyes, jaw clenched like he wanted to punch someone. His siblings followed behind. Dara, the second child, looking more shocked than angry, Femi, the third, scrolling on his phone as though the hearing bored him, and little Saad, the youngest, eyes red from crying. But none of them looked at their mother. Not even once. It made my chest burn with anger. The judge entered and everyone rose. After the formalities, the case was called. It wasn't yet a trial, just a fact-establishing hearing ordered by the court and the Ministry of Health to understand how a supposedly dead woman ended up alive in a gutter after her burial. When the judge asked if the living woman in question was present, all eyes turned to her. A soft gasp spread across the room. Mama Kemi lifted her veil slowly. And the courtroom erupted. Whispers, shouts, cries, exclamations. The judge slammed his gavel. Order. Order in this court. Then he leaned forward, studying her as though his eyes were trying to solve a mystery. Madam, can you state your name for the court? Her voice was shaky, but she spoke clearly. My name is Kemi Iola. And do you understand that this hearing concerns your supposed death and burial?
Yes, my lord. I do.
Then please, the judge said, tell the court in your own words what happened. The entire courtroom froze. Mama Kemi's hands shook as she gripped the microphone. She told them how she fell sick 2 days before her declared death, how she begged to be taken to the hospital but was ignored because she had become a financial liability to her own children. How she overheard 2 of her children arguing about a will they didn't want to wait for. How she collapsed and woke up in darkness, unable to move, struggling to breathe. How did you end up outside the grave? The judge asked. At that, her lips trembled and tears filled her eyes. I do not know, my lord. I only know that I woke up.
I was suffocating. I pushed and pushed until I crawled out. Then I walked. I kept walking until my strength finished.
If not for this young man, I would have died on the road.
Every eye turned to me. My palms immediately started sweating.
The judge nodded slowly and turned to the children. Do any of you wish to respond?
Toby stood up sharply.
My lord, with all due respect, what this spectacle is suggesting is impossible. My mother was examined by a certified doctor.
She had no pulse, no breath.
We accepted the medical report and followed the law. This, he gestured toward her, is either confusion or manipulation.
Manipulation? The hypocrisy made my jaw tighten. Then he pointed at me. And that man is not family.
He is homeless, he is desperate, and clearly he is looking for money.
The entire courtroom gasped.
Mama Kemi immediately shouted, Don't you dare speak about him like that. Her voice cracked with fury and for the first time, her eyes locked with her son's. You left me to die, she said. A mother who carried you in her womb.
A mother who suffered for you.
And this stranger, this poor man you insult, treated me with more kindness than all of you combined. The courtroom fell silent, painfully silent. Toby opened his mouth to respond but stopped. His lips trembled. For the first time his confidence wavered. The judge turned to me. Young man, step forward. My legs felt heavy as I approached the witness stand. People whispered as I passed, some pitying me, some sneering. What is your name? The judge asked. Michael Ocone, my lord. State your involvement. I told them everything, from finding her in the gutter to carrying her to safety, to battling ambulance staff who thought I was lying, to sleeping beside her hospital bed until she regained full consciousness. I told them how she knew her name, her family, her life. When I finished, the judge stared at me for a long moment. Young man, he said quietly, why did you help her?
I swallowed hard. Because she needed someone.
And you don't need money to be a human being. Another wave of murmurs swept the courtroom. When the testimonies ended, the judge ordered that DNA testing be done immediately to confirm her identity. The children agreed reluctantly. Results would take a few days. But before closing, the judge asked if Mama Kemi wished to say anything to her children.
She turned to them slowly.
Her voice was not angry now.
Not broken. Just sad.
My children, she said, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it but because my heart cannot carry the weight anymore. But forgiveness does not erase truth. You buried me before my time. You left me when I needed you most. And now, God Himself has brought me back, not for revenge, but to show you the kind of people you have become. Her youngest daughter broke down crying.
I'm sorry, Mama. I didn't know. I didn't want this.
But the others looked away. The judge dismissed everyone and the hall slowly emptied. Reporters swarmed, but police shielded us out through a private exit. Outside, as I pushed her wheelchair toward the car, she suddenly said, Michael, I have something to ask.
I paused.
When the results come out and everything becomes official, will you stay in my life? Not as my rescuer, but as my family?
My breath caught.
I don't have much to offer, I whispered. She reached for my hand and squeezed it gently. You offered me life, she said. What more is there?
I couldn't speak.
My chest felt too full. A breeze blew through the courtyard, carrying the scent of rain. Somewhere behind us, cameras flashed again, people shouting, noise rising like thunder. But in that moment it all felt distant.
Just me. Her.
And a new beginning nobody could have predicted. A beginning that started the day a homeless man stopped a billionaire's funeral, and dared to shout, She's not dead.
And he was right.